Christopher Nolan's latest film is out, The Odyssey, and like 5 people are able to see it in its intended format. Isn't that great? As you can probably tell, I wasn't able to get a 70mm IMAX ticket. I probably won't be able to see it in even a normal IMAX theater for a few weeks, but I do think I need to watch it again to really understand my feelings on it. Just a little bit of background, I'm not the biggest Nolan fan. I've seen most of his movies, and I don't know if I'd say he's made a bad movie necessarily. Most of them are overrated in my opinion, specifically The Dark Knight and Inception, both of which I enjoy, don't get me wrong. I just feel that they're really not my thing, and the conversation surrounding them just feels to be so over-exaggerated that they're the best things ever, and I just don't feel like that. That being said, I do think Oppenheimer and Dunkirk are both incredible. Easily the best 2 films he's made in my opinion, both 10s, and I really enjoy those films. The Odyssey, on the other hand, is a somewhat mixed bag. I was anticipating seeing this epic story and its iconic moments and imagery come to life in a way that I haven't seen before, and this film does not disappoint in that aspect of it. It looks incredible. Even though I saw the measly digital print, it imagines crappy alternative to IMAX, so I might as well not have watched it at all, you know. But honestly, this really is a visual spectacle in a way that I'm not sure I've ever seen at this scale before. The vast landscapes and complicated and choreographed battle sequences are stunning and immersive. They establish the universe for the narrative perfectly. The set design and cinematography create some truly wonderful moments that I haven't stopped thinking about and are making me want to watch it again right now. But that's just it. The film is primarily comprised of excellent moments and, well, I think that they are inarguably stunning and memorable, and holy fucking shit, that Cyclops suit was scary, and boy is the ocean loud and impressive, but the actual narrative surrounding them just didn't work for me. And I know how that sounds, that literally one of the most influential and important stories in human history doesn't work for me, but it just felt a little funky. And what I mean by that is, I think the primary issue is that Nolan's insistence on telling the story out of time, which works really well in both Dunkirk and Oppenheimer, and in plenty of other non-Nolan films, but felt out of place in this. I have not read the Odyssey, I've only read the Iliad, so I'm not entirely sure how that narrative is structured, but even if it is told non-chronologically, I do feel that it does not fit the film as well as I would have hoped. The film is balancing 4 different narratives. 1, you have Odysseus, played by Matt Damon, telling a story to Calypso, played by Charlize Theron. Secondly, you have the actual story that he is telling to Calypso. Thirdly, you have Tom Holland as Odysseus' son Telemachus, searching for information on his father. And fourth, throughout all of these, you have various flashbacks to the Battle of Troy. The issue is not that this is hard to follow or the pacing is bad. In fact, I think both are very well done. The narrative is very cohesive and easy to understand. I think the pacing is excellent. I never felt bored for 3 hours. This really flew by. Instead, the constant shifting of focus made it difficult for me to get invested in the narrative as a whole. Kind of what I'm talking about with being some great moments, but the actual whole narrative just didn't work for me. There are just some bizarre choices made. Like, even if they're in the original Odyssey, itself feels kind of odd. Like, why is Odysseus, once the Battle of Troy is over, he's like, yeah, let's dick around and go on an adventure instead of going straight home? Or why is he presenting himself as a beggar at the end instead of just showing up and exacting revenge as Odysseus? I just didn't really understand why those things happened. And again, I do know that that is in the original Odyssey, but I still feel, it's the way I feel, I can't help it. And it's not to say the whole thing didn't work, because there really are some excellent character arcs. I enjoyed the exploration of Odysseus' character and how he's affected by PTSD and how war has affected him as well as the world broadly. And Damon is unsurprisingly excellent. Also, Anne Hathaway as his wife Penelope was great, and I enjoyed seeing how the film explored her having to deal with the situation of having no power in her own home. Genuinely tragic stuff, and Hathaway's performance is excellent. The supporting cast, of which there are legit way too many to mention, are all really great as well. I think the weak link for me was Tom Holland, who I do normally like quite a bit, but I think he's a bit out of his element. He's never done anything of this sort, and you can really tell. He's much more at home as Spider-Man, and let's be honest, the dialogue is not doing him any favors either. I know people are typically down on Nolan's dialogue, and yeah, there's some rough examples.
You'll need your own air. Regular air won't pass through the membranes of inverted lungs. Inverted lungs. Inverted lungs.
But I think it can work. Although Dunkirk, which is previously mentioned, is one of my favorites of his, coincidentally has very little dialogue. But Oppenheimer is full of dialogue, and that film rules. The Odyssey, on the other hand, is kind of egregious. People have already made fun of Holland saying mom and dad, but it feels super out of place, and that's not the only example. There's just some really corny dialogue throughout the whole movie that feels as if it serves only to move the plot along. I think some of it was intentionally funny or goofy, especially Pattinson's character just saying various weapon names as they appear during the final showdown. If you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about. And I do think that was intentionally goofy, but there were just some moments that felt out of place tonally. I do appreciate that the film didn't approach the dialogue and script in an attempt to replicate a supposedly ancient dialect of speech, but to have such modern language in the film just felt out of place. People have also been clowning on the editing, and while I think that's fair and something I did notice occasionally, I thought it actually worked pretty well, especially considering the self-imposed restraints of shooting entirely with the IMAX blimp. Shooting this way is definitely a choice that is its own discussion entirely. I think it really did flow together fairly well for only being able to shoot for 2.5 minutes at a time. You didn't really feel too segmented like that. I actually thought it worked fairly well. People also don't like the costumes, and I actually thought they were great, especially Agamemnon's imposing suit of armor. I don't really care if the costumes are historically accurate, although it might be unfair of me to complain about the dialogue then, but who cares? I thought they looked really good for the most part. And again, the set design and sheer number of extras make the battle scenes and broad sweeping landscapes feel really immersive and are genuinely awesome in every sense of the word. They establish the world perfectly, and it's just truly incredible stuff. Also, the aforementioned Cyclops scene might be my favorite moment from any movie this year. It is genuinely terrifying, and at the end it's tragic, and throughout the whole thing it looks absolutely unreal. The way that that was captured is so impressive and so cool, and just more movies should be creative with how they do it instead of just relying on CGI, and I loved that moment. I watched an interview with Nolan where he was talking about how they constructed that scene. He said he got Bill Irwin to play the Cyclops, and it immediately clicked because I knew I recognized him from somewhere. Irwin brings such incredible apathy to the role, and combined with the truly impressive physical presence established by the specific means of shooting and creating the monster, it really blew me away. The other moment from the film that has stuck with me is Circe turning Odysseus' men into pigs. It is brief, but I really loved it, and I think it exemplified the film's theme of men being violent because of the longevity of the war and the conflict itself, and how that normalizes horrific violence against others. They are the men from the sea. These themes and ideas worked really well in the film's favor, developing Odysseus and how he has changed negatively because of the war, but also how the world and society broadly have shifted negatively to becoming more violent, abusive, manipulative, and just all around awful. I do think ultimately the film does work, and I predict that I will enjoy it more on my second watch. I do intend to watch this again in the theater in IMAX if I can. Currently, I do think I'll give this Odyssey a 7 out of 10 for now. It's definitely a film that I'm looking forward to rewatching, and I think a lot of the themes and complexities of the film will reveal themselves on a rewatch. And who knows, maybe I'll feel differently about the dialogue or Holland's performance as well, or the non-chronological telling of the film. But for now, I'll give the film a 7 out of 10. Thanks so much for watching. I'll stick around. I'm working on a ranking of all the Ghibli films, so that'll be out, at some point eventually, but it means a lot. And yeah, I'll see you in the next video.